She was only 12 when the market woman spat at her feet and called her the daughter of a demon. The words didn't sting anymore. What hurt was how normal it felt. The world had long decided Shalola didn't belong, that she was something between a ghost and a curse. Still, she stood there, barefoot and silent, gripping the trembling hand of her mother, who was humming to an invisible choir. The smell of smoke and gutter water hung thick in the air. Around them, Lagos kept moving. Traders shouting, buses honking, people stepping over them like debris. And yet Skolola kept her back straight, her eyes alert, her spirit unbroken. Because deep inside, she still believed the impossible, that one day she'd sit in a classroom, not a gutter. The insult faded behind her, drowned by the rumble of engines. Her mother, Abini, rocked back and forth beside a wall streaked with rain stains, murmuring about angels. "They took my wings," she whispered. Skolola gently pulled the wrapper over her mother's shoulders. "Shh, Mommy. Keep them safe in your dreams," she said softly. Abini smiled at nothing, her gaze floating somewhere beyond the sky. Every morning was a repeat of the last. Wake before sunrise, calm her mother's screams, beg for coins, endure the mockery. Skolola had learned to measure survival in the smallest victories: a leftover plate of rice, a smile from a stranger, a dry patch of pavement when it rained. Her stomach often knotted with hunger, but her mind stayed restless. She could still recall the sound of chalk on a board, though she hadn't been inside a classroom since the woman who once paid her fees disappeared 2 years ago. It was hard to explain how a child from the street could still crave equations and books. But Shalola's hunger wasn't just for food, it was for meaning. Sometimes she'd collect torn flyers, flip them over, and copy words she remembered from old lessons. Her pencil was a stick, her notebook was dust, yet she wrote anyway. That morning she heard laughter, 2 schoolgirls in neat uniforms, one pointing at her. "Look at the mad woman's child," the girl sneered. Skolola looked down at her legs, covered in dirt, and at her mother, who was trying to feed a pigeon a handful of gravel. Shame burned through her chest. But then she noticed one thing: the girls had books. Her gaze locked onto them like they were treasure chests. For a fleeting second, she imagined herself walking beside them, carrying her own school bag, talking about lessons instead of begging for mercy. A raindrop hit her cheek, then another. Within seconds, the sky cracked open. People rushed for cover. Skolola didn't move. She simply turned toward her mother, who was laughing, spinning in the rain, shouting at the clouds. Skolola smiled sadly and joined her. If they were going to be mad together, at least they'd dance. That night, under a broken kiosk roof, Skolola couldn't sleep. The city buzzed with distant music and honking horns, but her mind was somewhere else. "Why did you give me this brain?" she whispered to the darkness. "If I'm never going to use it?" Her mother stirred beside her, mumbling about birds. Skolola stared up through the cracked ceiling where a few stars flickered. "I just want to learn," she said. "That's all." Morning came heavy and gray. She woke to find a dead rat beside their mat of cardboard. Her stomach twisted. There was no food left. So she did what she always did: walked to the market. Abini followed halfway before sitting in a puddle, singing to herself. Shalola pressed a kiss to her mother's head and continued alone, weaving between stalls. That's when she smelled it, the warm, rich scent of yallof rice and fried plantain. Her stomach growled so loud a woman behind the food stand turned her head. Their eyes met. Skolola froze. The woman, full-bodied and kind-eyed, raised an eyebrow. "You hungry?" she asked. Shalola didn't answer. Strangers were dangerous. They either wanted labor or pity. Both cost too much. But the woman didn't reach for her purse. She simply lifted a covered plate and held it out. "Here," she said. "Eat before it gets cold." Skolola hesitated. "I don't have money." "Then pay me with a smile," the woman said. Her name was Auntie Linda, and that moment changed everything. The rice was soft and steaming, the first real meal Skolola had tasted in weeks. She devoured it under Auntie Linda's watchful eyes. When she finished, the woman poured her water and asked, "Where's your home?" Skolola pointed vaguely toward the road. "There, with my mommy." "She's sick?" Skolola nodded. Auntie Linda sighed. "You're a strong one." Then she smiled. "Come tomorrow. You'll help me clean. I'll feed you." It was the first real offer of hope she'd ever heard. That night, Shalola told her mother, though she wasn't sure if Abini understood. "We'll be okay, Mommy," she whispered. "I met someone good." And for the first time in a long while, she fell asleep with a full stomach and a fragile, fluttering kind of joy. Like maybe tomorrow would finally be different. The next morning, Shalola woke before the sun. The city was still half asleep, the streets wet from last night's rain, but she felt an excitement she hadn't felt in years. She had somewhere to go. Someone was waiting. Her mother was still curled up, muttering softly about angels and feathers. Skolola tucked a piece of cardboard under her mother's head as a pillow, whispered, "I'll bring food," and started toward the market. Auntie Linda's stall smelled of fried pepper and smoke. She was already sweeping when she spotted Shalola's thin figure hovering at the edge of the curb. "You came back," she said, smiling as if that were the most natural miracle in the world. Skolola nodded shyly. "Good. Grab that bucket. Let's see if you can work as hard as you eat." The work was endless, but easy to love. Washing plates, scrubbing benches, fetching water. For the first time in a long while, every task meant something. By noon, Shalola's fingers were wrinkled, her arms sore, but her heart was light. Auntie Linda handed her a plate of jollof rice and laughed. "You clean like you're chasing the devil himself." "I'm chasing hunger," Shalola said honestly. The woman chuckled. "Then may you catch him and tie him forever." That afternoon, as Shalola swept near the counter, she saw a small notebook half covered in flour dust. Someone had written neat numbers and English words inside. She traced a finger over them, whispering, "Adjective, multiplication, noun." The pages smelled of pencil and hope, Auntie Linda noticed. "You can read?" "A little," Shalola said. "I listen outside school sometimes." The woman's broom stopped midair. "Outside schools?" "Yes, Mom. I stand by the fence. I repeat what they say. Sometimes I write it in sand so I don't forget." Auntie Linda looked at her for a long moment, then slowly closed the notebook. "You're something else, girl. Wait here." She walked off and returned a few minutes later with a plastic bag. Inside was an old exercise book, half used, and two short pencils. "For you," she said. "If you like learning so much, then learn properly." Skolola could barely speak. "For me? Who else?" the woman said. "Now go home before dark. Come early tomorrow." That night, Skolola wrote until the moon climbed high. She practiced her name over and over, Scholola. She underlined it twice, proud as any queen signing a decree. Her mother sang nonsense songs beside her, but Skolola didn't mind. For once, the world didn't feel cruel. It felt possible. Days blurred into weeks. Every morning she worked for Auntie Linda. Every evening she studied the words she'd written in her little book. The woman taught her simple arithmetic while counting coins, spelling while labeling dishes. When Skolola added numbers faster than Auntie Linda's calculator one day, the woman just stared. "You never went to proper school?" "Only 2 years," Skolola said. "Then Auntie Bezzy stopped paying." Auntie Linda's lips pressed together in thought. 2 days later, she took Shalola by the hand to a dusty public school nearby. The headmistress looked skeptical until she saw Shalola solve a math question faster than her top student. "She deserves a chance," Auntie Linda insisted. "I'll pay her fees." And just like that, the girl who had learned letters from the dirt was back in a classroom. Her uniform was too big, the sleeves swallowing her wrists, but she wore it like a royal robe. On the first day, children whispered, giggled. But when the teacher asked a hard question, Shalola's hand shot up before anyone else's. Her answer was perfect. The room fell silent. By the second week, even the headmistress came to watch her recite poems from memory. "Where did this child come from?" someone whispered. Auntie Linda only smiled. "From God's forgotten corner." Every afternoon, Shalola ran back to the food stall to help clean. Auntie Linda never treated her like charity. "You work, you earn, you learn," she'd say. "That's the rule." Skolola loved her for it, but joy is a fragile thing. One evening, Auntie Linda came home holding a white envelope, tears in her eyes. "My sister in the UK finally processed my papers," she said. "After 7 years, I can go." Skolola's heart leapt. "So we're traveling?" "No, child." The woman's smile wavered. "Just me. I've paid your fees through this term. Maybe God will send someone else to help you after. The world tilted. Skolola wanted to beg, to cry, to hold on, but she only nodded. Thank you, Ma, she whispered. 3 weeks later, Auntie Linda was gone. The food stand closed, her school fees unpaid, and Skolola was once again standing outside a locked gate with a notebook pressed to her chest, watching the rich world pass her by. Still, when the guard told her to leave, she whispered the same prayer she always did. God, please don't let this be the end of my story. The school gate clanged shut behind her, sealing Skolola out like a stray cat. She stood there for hours clutching her bag of books, waiting for Auntie Linda to appear again, as if faith alone could make her return. The afternoon sun burned her shoulders, but she didn't move. Children streamed out, laughing, calling to their parents waiting with cars and snacks. None of them noticed the barefoot girl standing in the dust, eyes fixed on the road that led nowhere. When the gateman finally muttered, "Go home, little one," she nodded, though she had nowhere to go. Her home had long since been claimed by someone else, a drunk who'd once chased her off with a belt. The corner by the bakery was gone too, now occupied by glue-sniffing boys with hollow eyes. Even the gutter where her mother used to beg seemed changed, colder somehow. She found a beanie sitting near a pile of trash, rocking a broken bottle like a baby. "Mommy, it's me," Shalola whispered, kneeling beside her. The woman blinked, confused, then laughed suddenly. "My daughter has wings," she said, tracing the air with her fingers. "She flew away." "I didn't fly, Mommy," Shalola said, her throat tightening. "I'm right here." But her mother only sang louder, the words melting into madness. That night, they slept beneath a torn billboard. Skolola tried to study by the flicker of passing car lights, but the words blurred. Her uniform, once bright, was now gray and threadbare. The exercise book Auntie Linda had bought was stained with rain. She held it close anyway, as if clinging to the last piece of hope she had left. The next morning she rose before dawn. She tied her book in a black nylon bag and walked to the school again. Maybe they would change their minds, maybe someone would help. But when the headmistress saw her sitting by the wall, she frowned. "Didn't I tell you already? No fees, no school." "I'll pay," Shalola said quickly. "I'll find the money." "How? You and that crazy woman can't even eat," the woman snapped. "Now go, before you embarrass yourself." The gate slammed again. Skolola sank to the ground and cried until her voice broke. The tears were hot, but the pain was colder than anything she'd ever known. Days turned into weeks. Hunger returned, fierce and familiar. She tried selling sachets of water on credit, but when thieves stole her earnings, the shopkeeper kicked her away. She sold her last pair of sandals for 300 naira to buy bread for her mother. Nights were long and loud. Cars, shouts, dogs, rain. But the silence inside her was louder still. And yet the next morning she did something extraordinary. She picked up a stick and wrote in the dust. 2x204. Then she erased it with her foot and wrote again. 3x309. It became her ritual, her way of reminding herself that she still existed, that her mind still worked. She found new places to study, beside a cracked wall near City Crest Academy, where she could hear teachers' voices drifting through open windows. When the students recited lessons, she mouthed the words quietly, matching their rhythm. Sometimes she even corrected their mistakes under her breath. One afternoon, the teacher noticed her. "Hey, who's that?" The window banged open. Skolola froze, heart hammering. A boy pointed. "It's that mad girl again, the one who follows us." Laughter erupted. Skolola tried to explain. "I just want to listen." But the teacher's glare silenced her. "Go tell your mother to pay school fees first, if you even know who your mother is." The words hit harder than stones. Skolola turned and ran, her bare feet slapping the pavement until the laughter faded behind her. Still, she came back the next day, and the day after. When one school locked its gates, she found another. At Bright Scholars Academy, she crouched near a broken fence to listen. Children threw pebbles at her, calling her names, witch, beggar, street rat, but she stayed. When a security guard caught her and shoved her to the ground, warning he'd beat her if he saw her again, she still returned the following week, hiding behind the mango tree outside the yard. Because she couldn't stop. Something inside her refused to die, the need to learn, to know. That night she lay beside her sleeping mother and stared at the stars. God, she whispered, why did you make me like this? Why give me a mind that won't rest when every door stays locked? No answer came, only the hum of the city and her mother's soft muttering. She closed her eyes, whispering the multiplication table to herself like a lullaby. When morning light crept over the horizon, Skolola rose again, dusted off her skirt, and walked toward the nearest school. The world would not give her a place, so she decided she would take one, even if it was just a patch of ground behind a fence. And though no one saw it yet, something was shifting in her story. Because that same day, beyond the gold-painted gates of a rich school she had never dared approach before, another lonely girl was struggling too, one who would soon change Shalola's life forever. Skolola wasn't supposed to be there. Queen's Crest International School shimmered like a dream behind its polished gates. Manicured lawns, fountains, and children stepping out of air-conditioned cars with pressed uniforms and shoes that gleamed like glass. Everything about it whispered untouchable. But that morning, as she balanced a tray of water on her head, watching those golden gates open, something inside her snapped. She was tired of fences, tired of watching life happen from the outside. When the guards turned to talk, she slipped in through a gap near the drainage pipe. Thorns scratched her legs, but she didn't stop until she reached a mango tree behind the classroom block. Her heart raced so loud she thought it might give her away. Through a cracked window, she could see students scribbling notes, the teacher drawing fractions on the board. She crouched low, pulled out her stub of pencil, and began writing the words she heard onto the back of an old flyer. Her hand trembled, but her eyes sparkled. This, the smell of chalk, the sound of learning, was her real home. She was halfway through copying a paragraph when a voice spoke behind her. "You're the girl they always chase away, right?" Skolola froze. She turned slowly. A girl about her age stood there. Neat cornrows, spotless uniform, and curious eyes. Her name tag read Jessica Agu. "I didn't mean any harm," Skolola stammered. "I was just listening." Jessica tilted her head. "Why?" "Because I want to learn," Skolola said simply. "My mother's sick. We live on the street. I can't go to school." Jessica frowned. "People laugh at me here too," she said softly. "They say I'm dumb, that my daddy pays the teachers to pass me." Skolola blinked, startled. But you're rich." Jessica shrugged, kicking at the grass. "Money doesn't make your brain work." They stared at each other for a long moment. Two girls from worlds apart, yet suddenly equally small beneath the same sun. Jessica sat down under the mango tree and patted the ground beside her. "Sit," she said. "Show me what you were writing." Skolola hesitated, then sat. Jessica opened her textbook. "Can you teach me this? I don't get it." The page was filled with fractions. Skolola studied it for a second, then smiled faintly. "Okay, see this? When you have 1/2 and 1/4, they're not the same kind of pieces. You have to make them the same before adding them." Jessica's brow furrowed. "Like, same-size pieces?" "Exactly," Skolola said, eyes lighting up. "Make both into quarters, then count them. 2 quarters and 1 quarter make 3 quarters. Jessica gasped. "That's it. I get it now." A laugh burst out of Skolola. A real one, from her chest, light and alive. For once, someone was happy to hear her speak. They stayed under that tree until the bell rang. Jessica scribbled in her notebook, excited, while Skolola memorized every word. When the last bell echoed, Jessica stood up reluctantly. "Will you come tomorrow?" "I shouldn't," Skolola murmured. "They'll chase me." Jessica's lips curled into a determined grin. "Wait here." She ran toward the building and disappeared. Minutes later, she returned with the school's security guard trailing behind her. "This is my friend," she said firmly, pointing to Skolola. "Her name is Skolola. She'll be here during lunch every day. Let her in." The guard looked confused. "But..." "She's my friend," Jessica repeated, her tone sharp. "And my daddy owns this school. Do you have a problem with that?" The man froze, muttered something about small madam, and walked away. Jessica turned to Skolola with a triumphant smile. "See? Problem solved." Skolola couldn't move. No one had ever defended her before. She swallowed hard. "Thank you," she whispered. Jessica shrugged. "Just be here tomorrow. Same time. Bring your paper. I'll bring food." As Skolola left the school grounds that day, The streets didn't look quite so cruel. The dust still stung her feet, but her heart was lighter than it had ever been. That night, as her mother sang to the darkness, Shalola whispered a prayer into her palms. God, please, let this be real. Don't take it away like everything else. The next day she returned to the mango tree. Jessica was already waiting, lunchbox in hand, smiling as if she'd been waiting her whole life. And beneath that tree, a friendship began, one that would change both of their worlds forever. From that day onward, the mango tree became their classroom. Every lunch break, Jessica would sneak away from the cafeteria carrying her lunchbox and a pair of spoons. And there, under the wide green shade, Shalola would already be waiting. Barefoot, her torn gown washed as clean as water could make it, clutching her plastic bag of scraps and pencils like treasure. They were two worlds colliding in silence, one polished and rich, the other raw and hungry. Yet when they sat together, all the walls disappeared. Shalola taught, Jessica learned, but more than that, they understood each other. Don't just read it, Shalola would say gently, tapping the page with her stub of pencil. Read it like you're talking to someone. Jessica would try again, stumbling, laughing when she got it wrong. When she finally got it right, Shalola would clap her hands, her eyes shining. Perfect! Jessica grinned like she just won a medal. You're the best teacher ever. Shalola blushed and looked down. I just explain how I understand it. No, Jessica said, serious now. You make me want to learn. No one ever did that before. For Jessica, school had always been pressure. Expectations she couldn't meet, comparisons she couldn't escape. Her father, Chief Agu, was a powerful man who believed success was measured in results, not feelings. Her teachers treated her like an investment. Her classmates saw her as a spoiled heiress who couldn't keep up. But Shalola didn't see her that way. Shalola saw her, the scared little girl behind the expensive uniform. One afternoon, after a long lesson, Jessica asked, Do you have a best friend? Shalola hesitated. You, she said softly. Jessica smiled. Me too. Then after a moment she added, But what if my dad finds out? He doesn't like me making friends outside our circle. He says people use us. Shalola's face fell. Then you'll forget me. Jessica shook her head. Never. You will, Shalola said, her voice trembling slightly. Rich people always leave. My mother says everyone leaves once they see who you really are. Jessica reached over and grabbed her hand. You're wrong. I'll never leave you, Shalola. You're my magic. Magic? Shalola laughed, confused. Yes, Jessica said earnestly. Who else could make fractions make sense? Who else can make me laugh even when I fail? You're like sunshine in the dirt. For a long moment, they just sat there holding hands, two girls who had nothing in common, except everything that mattered. In the following weeks, Jessica changed. Teachers noticed she was paying attention. Her grades improved. Even her smile was different, confident, alive. But she didn't tell anyone why. Shalola was her secret, her strength, her hidden star under the mango tree. She started bringing small gifts, a hairbrush, a notepad, even a pair of slippers that Shalola rarely wore, afraid they'd be stolen on the street. In return, Shalola shared stories, real and imagined. There was once a girl, she said one afternoon, who found a book under a tree. Every time she read it, the world became brighter. But one day someone burned it, and the light went away. So she learned to write her own stories. Jessica sighed. That's beautiful. Shalola smiled faintly. It's true. Sometimes they talked about their mothers. Jessica spoke of her mom who had died when she was little, her voice breaking. Shalola told her about a beanie, who still talked to ghosts and shadows. Do you think she'll ever get better? Jessica asked. Shalola stared into the distance. I don't know, but I hope so. Jessica nodded. Then I'll hope with you. Their world was small, a patch of grass, the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant classrooms. But it was theirs. And for the first time in years, both girls felt safe. But every secret has a shadow. One Friday, as they shared spaghetti from Jessica's lunchbox, Jessica suddenly whispered, What if my dad walks in one day? Shalola froze mid-bite. Then you'll be in trouble. Jessica frowned. I don't care. I'll scream until he lets you stay. Skolola laughed softly, but inside she was afraid. She'd seen what rich men did when their worlds were disturbed. Her mother had once begged food from a rich man's car window and been slapped for touching his sleeve. "Promise me you won't get hurt for me," she said quietly. Jessica squeezed her hand. "Promise you won't leave." Neither of them knew then that both promises would soon be tested. That night, Skolola lay beside her mother, who was humming a lullaby to a rock she believed was a baby. The streetlights flickered overhead. Skolola opened her little notepad and drew two stick girls holding hands beneath a mango tree. One in uniform, one in rags. She smiled through tears and whispered, "Thank you, God. I finally have someone." But the wind carried a chill warning. Life had given her something precious, which meant it was only a matter of time before it tried to take it back. The morning began like any other. Sunlight spilling over the golden gates of Queen's Crest, students chattering, teachers rushing between classes. But for Jessica, it was the longest morning of her life. The clock hands crawled toward lunchtime, each tick a beat of impatience. She barely heard a word of the lessons. All she could think about was the mango tree and the friend waiting for her there. When the bell finally rang, she darted out, clutching a lunchbox packed with rice and Shalola's favorite biscuits. But as she reached the tree, her excitement turned to worry. The spot was empty. Minutes passed, then an hour. The lunch grew cold. Jessica bit her lip, pacing in circles, glancing at the gate. "Where are you, Shalola?" She was about to give up when she heard the sound of hurried footsteps. Shalola appeared at last, barefoot as always, her dress streaked with dust and sweat, a small cut on her arm. "I'm sorry," she panted. "My mom, she ran into the road. I had to pull her back. The car's almost—" Jessica didn't let her finish. She dropped the lunchbox and hugged her tightly. "You scared me," she said, her voice trembling. Skolola smiled weakly. "I told you, even if I had to crawl, I'd come." They sat beneath the tree and ate in silence, the tension melting into laughter as always. But that day the air felt different, heavier, as though the world was holding its breath. Jessica looked at her friend, tracing the dirt on her arms, the bruises that never seemed to heal. "One day," she said, "I'll tell my dad about you. I don't want to hide you anymore." Skolola froze mid-bite. "Jessica, no, please don't." "Why not?" "Because rich people don't like girls like me sitting under their trees. Your father will be angry." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Then I'll scream until he listens." Skolola chuckled softly. "You're brave, but the world doesn't change because we shout." "Then we'll make it change," Jessica said, determination flashing in her eyes. Skolola wanted to believe her. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had someone on her side, someone who believed she wasn't cursed or broken. She didn't want to lose that. That night, as she lay beside her sleeping mother, Shalola thought about Jessica's words. What would it be like to meet her father? The thought filled her with equal parts fear and longing. Maybe, just maybe, he would see her differently. Not as a street girl, but as someone trying. Still, she pushed the thought away. People like Chief Agu didn't notice people like her, but fate had already begun to stir. The next day at school, Jessica could barely sit still. Her teachers praised her for answering questions, unaware that the answers had been taught not by tutors, but by a barefoot genius under a tree. At exactly 12:35, she ran to the field, lunchbox in hand, her heart full of anticipation. She didn't know that on the other side of the school, a convoy of black SUVs had just pulled through the gate. Chief Agu rarely visited without warning. When he did, the entire school noticed. Teachers straightened their ties. The principal nearly tripped over herself greeting him. He moved like a storm, quiet, powerful, impossible to ignore. Jessica froze when she saw the cars. Her stomach dropped. Not today, she thought. She turned toward the mango tree just as Skolola appeared, smiling, unaware of the shadow approaching. "I'm here," Skolola said brightly. "Sorry, I had to fetch water first." Jessica's eyes widened. "Shh, my dad's—" Too late. The low hum of the engines faded as the doors opened. Chief Agu stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in white linen and quiet authority. His gaze swept the grounds, sharp and assessing. "Jessica," he called, his voice carried like thunder. She turned, frozen, her father's tone slicing through the warm afternoon air. "What are you doing out here?" he asked as he strode forward, two assistants trailing behind. Then he saw her, the barefoot girl beside his daughter, dusty, trembling, holding a worn nylon bag and a half-eaten biscuit. "Who is this?" he demanded. Jessica stepped forward, her heart pounding. "This is Skolola," she said, her voice shaking. "She's my friend." Chief Agu blinked. "Your friend?" "She helps me," Jessica said quickly. "She teaches me. She's the reason I'm finally doing well in school." A heavy silence fell. Teachers had begun to gather at a distance, whispering. Chief Agu's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the terrified child before him. "Who are your parents?" he asked quietly. Skolola swallowed hard. "I don't know my father, sir. My mother. She's sick. People call her mad." The assistants exchanged awkward glances. Jessica's hand found Skolola's and squeezed it tight. "You're not in school?" Chief Agu asked. "No, sir. No one to pay the fees." Jessica spoke again, her voice trembling but firm. "Please, Daddy, don't be angry. She just wanted to learn." For a long moment, the billionaire said nothing. His gaze moved between them, the daughter he'd raised to fear failure, and the barefoot child who somehow defied it. Then his voice softened. "You've been teaching my daughter every day?" Sholola nodded faintly. "Yes, sir." Chief Agu exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. "Take me to your mother," he said at last. Skolola blinked. "Sir?" "I said, take me to your mother." Jessica's eyes widened. "You're not angry?" He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something unexpected in his face. Not anger, not pride. Something closer to curiosity, or maybe guilt. "No," he said quietly. "I just want to see where she comes from." And with that, the convoy turned toward the city, not knowing that what waited in the slums of Mile 12 would change all their lives forever. The convoy rolled through the chaos of Mile 12 like an alien machine. Black SUVs slicing through smoke, dust, and the smell of burning trash. People stopped mid-stride to stare. Skolola had never been inside a car before, let alone one with tinted glass and air conditioning that smelled like money. She sat frozen beside Jessica, her calloused hands clutching her lap as the city blurred past. When they stopped, Chief Agu stepped out first. "Where?" he asked quietly. Skolola pointed. Across the road, beneath a crumbling wall, her mother sat barefoot, humming to herself and clapping at invisible things. Her wrapper was half-slipped, her hair matted, her smile vacant. "That's my mommy," Sholola whispered. Chief Agu walked toward her without hesitation. Flies circled the air. Abini looked up, blinking, then laughed. "You again! You took my wings. I want them back." Jessica shrank behind her father, startled, but he only knelt beside the woman. "Madam," he said softly, "I'm here to help." "Help!" Abini giggled. "Help is for angels." She pushed at his chest weakly. "I lost my daughter. She fell from the sky." Skolola's eyes filled. "I'm right here, Mommy." Abini's gaze flickered, confusion swimming through madness. For half a heartbeat, she almost saw her child. Then the moment vanished, and she began to sing. Chief Agu rose, his expression unreadable. "We'll take her," he said to one of his assistants. "Get Dr. Aisha on the phone. Psychiatric unit. Full treatment. No delays." "Sir," Sholola stammered, panic flooding her. "Please don't hurt her. She's not dangerous. She just talks to things that aren't there." He turned to her, his voice gentler than before. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm going to make her well." Jessica slipped her small hand into Sholola's. "You can trust him," she whispered. 30 minutes later, an ambulance pulled away from the slum, carrying Abini toward a hospital she'd never have dreamed existed. Skolola stood by the SUV, silent, her eyes following the flashing red light until it disappeared. Chief Agu placed a hand on her shoulder. "From today," he said quietly, "you're not a homeless girl." She blinked up at him, unsure if she'd heard right. "You have a father now," he added, her breath caught. "Sir, No," he said firmly. "No more, sir. Call me Papa if you can." She couldn't. Not yet. The word felt too heavy, too sacred. But something cracked open inside her. a small, fragile warmth she hadn't felt since childhood. The drive back to his mansion felt like traveling into another world. Paved roads replaced mud. Electric lights replaced the dim glow of firewood. The gates opened soundlessly to reveal a house so vast she thought it was a hotel. Jessica squeezed her hand. "Welcome home." Maids hurried forward, their eyes wide. Chief Agu gestured to them. "This is Skolola. She'll be staying here from now on. Treat her with the same respect you give my daughter." There was a stunned silence, then a chorus of polite, "Yes, sir." Later that evening, Shalola took her first real bath in years. Warm water ran down her skin, peeling away layers of street dust and sorrow. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, the same eyes, the same face. But somehow she looked different, cleaner, maybe even possible. Jessica entered with a bundle of clothes. "These are mine, but they'll fit you," she said, grinning. "Tomorrow we'll get your own." When Skolola stepped out in the borrowed pajamas, Jessica clapped her hands. "You look like a real student." Skolola laughed softly. "I still feel like I'm dreaming." "You're not," Jessica said. "My daddy said you belong here." That night, Skolola couldn't sleep. She lay in a soft bed that smelled of lavender, staring at the ceiling, afraid it would vanish if she closed her eyes. She whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, God. Just thank you." The next morning brought another shock. On her bed lay a neatly folded Queen's Crest uniform, new, crisp, her name already stitched into the fabric. Jessica burst into the room. "Come on! We're going to school together." When Shalola saw herself in the mirror wearing the uniform, she barely recognized the girl staring back. The street child was gone. In her place stood a student, shoulders straight, eyes bright. Jessica twirled beside her. "Now you really are my sister." Skolola smiled weakly. "I don't know how to thank your father." "Then don't say it," Jessica replied. "Show him, shine." And she did. When they walked into Queen's Crest that morning, matching uniforms, matching bags, the entire school went silent. Whispers followed them down the hallway. "Isn't that the street girl? What's she doing here?" But Skolola didn't bow her head this time. She walked beside Jessica through the front gate, not behind it. By the end of the day, the teachers were speechless. She answered every question, solved every problem, and read aloud with perfect diction. The principal whispered to a colleague, "Where did this child come from?" "From the gutter," Shalola thought. But she didn't say it. She just smiled. And somewhere in the quiet of his office, Chief Agu looked out the window toward the mango tree, where two girls once sat, and whispered to himself, "Maybe wealth isn't about what you own, but who you save." The days that followed unfolded like something out of a dream Skolola was afraid to wake from. Every morning she woke in a real bed, under a roof that didn't leak, surrounded by walls that smelled of soap instead of smoke. The mansion buzzed with the quiet rhythm of wealth. Footsteps on marble floors, breakfast served on shining plates, and the low hum of staff who bowed when she passed. She didn't understand how to belong yet, but she was learning. Jessica refused to let her feel like a guest. "You're my sister now," she'd say as they got ready for school, braiding Skolola's hair and laughing at how she flinched when the mirror caught her reflection. "You look beautiful," Jessica insisted. "You just don't know it yet." The uniform still felt too fine, the shoes too soft, but Skolola wore them with pride. Each morning when they stepped through the Queen's Crest gates side by side, heads turned. Whispers followed them down the hallway like an echo. "Isn't that the street girl? The billionaire took her in. Why her?" At first the whispers burned, but Shalola didn't bow her head. She'd lived through ridicule before. On the streets, in markets, under bridges, she had armor made of scars. What she hadn't expected was Jessica's reaction. The first time someone muttered, "Gutter girl," Jessica turned around so fast her braids whipped through the air. "She's smarter than all of you," she snapped. "If you knew half what she's been through, you'd call her a hero, not a name." That day, the hallway fell silent. In class, Shalola soared. Lessons that had once been stolen through windows now belonged to her. She raised her hand constantly, answered confidently, and even helped other students who struggled. The teachers noticed. One by one, they grew fond of the new girl, who was always polite, curious, and brilliant. By the end of the first month, Shalola's name was on the honor roll. One afternoon, she sat in the garden with her books, sunlight dappling the pages. Chief Agu stepped outside, his phone pressed to his ear. He paused when he saw her. Still studying? She stood immediately. Yes, sir. Sorry, Papa. The word still felt strange, but he smiled when she said it. He approached and gestured for her to sit. You remind me of someone, he said. When I was a boy, I used to sit under a mango tree and dream of a better life. My mother sold tomatoes. I thought I'd never escape. Skolola blinked. You were poor too? Very, he said simply. But someone saw me, gave me a chance. I promised I'd do the same one day. When I saw you teaching Jessica, I knew. It was time to keep that promise. She stared down at her lap, overwhelmed. Thank you for seeing me, she whispered. Chief Agu smiled gently. You were never invisible, Shalola. The world just wasn't looking close enough. That night she visited her mother at the hospital. The psychiatric ward was quiet, smelling of antiseptic and distant sadness. Abini sat by the window, humming softly to herself. When Shalola entered, she didn't react at first. But as Skolola knelt beside her and took her hand, the woman's gaze flickered. You look like the sky, Abini murmured, blue and far away. It's me, Mommy, Skolola whispered. Your daughter. For a long moment, silence. Then Abini reached up and brushed her cheek. My daughter, the one who didn't fly away. Tears broke free, hot and unstoppable. I'm here, Mommy, I'm here. From that day, Shalola visited every week. Slowly, Abini began to stabilize. She remembered fragments, a lullaby, a name, the smell of rain. It wasn't a full recovery, but it was hope. At school, Skolola's life continued to change. Jessica thrived beside her, her confidence reborn. The two girls were inseparable, studying together, laughing in hallways, sharing secrets late into the night. When Jessica's teachers asked how she'd improved so quickly, she simply said, I found my magic. By the second term, the principal called Chief Agu into a meeting. Sir, she said, barely containing her astonishment, your daughter's friend is exceptional. She's far ahead of her peers. With proper guidance, she could win scholarships abroad. Chief Agu's expression softened with pride. Then she'll have everything she needs, he said. That evening, he summoned Shalola to his study. She stood nervously by the door, clutching her hands. Papa, did I do something wrong? He laughed. Wrong? You've done more right than anyone I know. He reached into a drawer and handed her a slim tablet. Your new school materials are preloaded here. Math, science, languages, everything you could dream of. Her eyes widened. For me? He nodded. You've earned it. She ran her fingers over the screen, trembling. I don't know how to thank you. Just promise me one thing, he said quietly. Never forget where you came from. Use what you learned to lift others the way someone lifted you. I promise, she whispered. Later that night, Shalola stood outside in the garden. The mango tree swayed gently in the evening breeze, its leaves whispering secrets. She sat beneath it and whispered her own prayer. God, I used to ask for just one friend. You gave me a sister. I used to ask for food. You gave me a home. I used to ask for a miracle. You made me one. She closed her eyes and smiled. For the first time, her dreams no longer felt like fantasies. They felt like memories of a life she was already living. For weeks, the rhythm of Skolola's new life felt almost unreal. Too soft, too kind, too far removed from the roar of the streets she once called home. Yet she carried that world with her in everything she did. When she sat at the polished desk in her new room, she could still hear the market noise in her mind. When she opened her math book, she still thought of the dust where she used to write numbers with a stick. Her gratitude was fierce, but so was her fear. She kept waiting for it all to vanish. The food, the bed, the laughter. Poverty had trained her to distrust happiness. One morning as the driver pulled up to the school, Jessica nudged her. You keep staring out the window like someone's going to take this away, she said. Skolola smiled faintly. Maybe I just don't want to forget where I came from. Jessica leaned closer. That's the difference between you and everyone else here. They want to forget. You remember. At Queen's Crest, the two girls had become legends. The story of the billionaire's daughter and the street girl spread beyond the classrooms, through teachers, parents, and even news whispers. But Shalola didn't care for gossip. She cared about lessons, grades, and her mother. Every week, she still visited Abini at the psychiatric facility. Slowly, her mother began to return to herself. Small things at first. Eating properly, humming lullabies that now had words instead of nonsense. Even recognizing Shalola for a few seconds at a time. On the fifth visit, Abini reached for her hand and whispered, "My daughter, you grew into light." Shalola broke down, holding her mother's fragile fingers against her cheek. "You'll be okay, Mommy, I promise." When she returned home that evening, Chief Agu was waiting in the study. He was reading the day's paper but looked up as soon as she entered. "Dr. Aisha called," he said. "Your mother's improving." "She smiled at me today," Shalola said, her voice trembling with joy. He nodded. "I'm glad." Then he gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. I want to talk to you about something important." She obeyed quickly, her posture straight. "You've been doing exceptionally well in school," he said. "Your teachers can't stop talking about you. They say your mind is extraordinary." Shalola lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "I just like learning." "That's exactly why I've decided to invest in you," he continued. "There's a scholarship foundation I support, one for gifted students. It's international. If you pass the exams next year, you could study anywhere in the world." Her heart stopped. "Anywhere." "Anywhere," he said simply. "London, New York, Nairobi, you name it." Her breath caught and tears welled up. "Papa, I don't even know what to say." He smiled. "Say you'll try." "I'll try," she whispered fiercely. He leaned back, pride glimmering in his eyes. "Good, because you've changed more than Jessica. You've changed me. You reminded me why I built all this. Not for power, but for purpose." She blinked fast, trying not to cry. Later that night, she and Jessica sat outside in the garden, the air thick with crickets and the faint scent of mango leaves. The moonlight turned everything silver. Jessica was lying on the grass, looking up at the stars. "Do you think we'll always be like this?" she asked softly. "Like what?" Shalola asked. "Together, sisters, happy." Shalola hesitated. "I hope so." Jessica rolled over to face her. "No matter where you go, promise you won't forget me." "I could never forget you," Shalola said. "You're the reason I found my voice again." Jessica smiled. "And you're the reason I found my mind." They both laughed quietly. The laughter carried something sacred, an unspoken understanding that they had saved each other in ways words couldn't capture. The next day, Shalola received a small envelope on her desk at school. It was from Chief Agu. Inside was a letter written in his firm, deliberate handwriting. "When you teach one child, you change one life. But when you teach a teacher, you change a generation. Keep teaching, my daughter, even when you've outgrown the mango tree." She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling its weight. That afternoon, she returned to that same tree behind the classroom. It stood there, strong and quiet, its branches heavy with fruit. She sat beneath it, tracing the initials she and Jessica had once carved into the bark, S+J. A group of younger students noticed her and approached curiously. "Aren't you the new girl?" one of them asked. Shalola smiled. "Not so new anymore." "Can you help us with this math problem?" another asked, holding up a workbook. She laughed softly. "Of course." And as she explained fractions and patience to the little ones, she realized something. The mango tree had never really been hers and Jessica's alone. It had been waiting all along, a quiet witness to hope being passed forward. When the bell rang, she looked up at the sky, where clouds drifted lazily, glowing with sunlight. Her world had once been so small, just hunger, dust, and fear. But now it was vast, full of direction and promise. The girl who once listened through a window now had classrooms, mentors, and dreams big enough to carry others through. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Weeks turned into months, and the world that once pitied Shalola now applauded her. Newspapers ran headlines like, "Billionaire adopts street girl, changes 2 lives," and "From gutter to glory, the girl who taught a billionaire's daughter." Cameras flashed when she entered school. Sponsors offered scholarships. But beneath all the noise, Shalola stayed the same girl who once wrote her dreams in dust. Chief Agu shielded her from the chaos. "Let them talk," he said one evening. as they watched the sunset from the balcony. The world loves a miracle story, but it rarely understands the work behind it. You just keep learning. Keep being you. I will, Papa, she said. I owe you everything. He shook his head. You owe me nothing. You've already repaid me by showing me what kindness really means. Shalola smiled, but inside she wondered if she would ever feel like she truly belonged. Wealth was soft, but it could never erase the roughness of memory. She still dreamed of rain dripping through tin roofs, of her mother's laughter echoing through the streets. A week later, she visited her mother again. The hospital garden smelled of soap and wet grass. Abini sat beneath a jacaranda tree, her hands folded neatly in her lap. When she looked up, her eyes were clearer than Shalola had ever seen them. My daughter, she said softly, you came back. I never left, Mommy, Shalola whispered. Abini reached out and brushed her cheek, her touch gentle and real. You look like your father, she said suddenly. He was kind too. Shalola froze. You remember him? Abini nodded slowly. He was a builder, said he'd make a house so tall the stars would bow to it. But he died before he could finish. Her eyes grew distant again. You must build it for him, my child. You must finish what he started. Tears stung Shalola's eyes. I will, she promised. I'll build something worth his dream. That night she told Jessica about it. Maybe that's what I'll do, she said. Study architecture. Build homes for children like me. Ones that don't leak when it rains. Jessica grinned. And I'll decorate them. We'll make a whole world together. The two laughed until their sides hurt. The kind of laughter that healed. As months passed, Shalola's story became part of Queen's Crest's legacy. Teachers used her journey to inspire other students. If Shalola can do it, what's your excuse? She never bragged, never boasted. Her quiet brilliance spoke louder than pride ever could. When exam season arrived, she worked harder than anyone. Late nights by the desk, whispered equations, prayers before sleep. Jessica would peek in and joke, if you study anymore, the books will start studying you. But deep down, Jessica was proud. Her friend who had once been her teacher was now unstoppable. The day results were announced, the principal herself came to their classroom. Her voice trembled with excitement. Students, I have an announcement. For the first time in the school's history, our top students scored perfect marks in every subject. Shalola Agu, please stand. The room erupted in applause. Shalola rose slowly, overwhelmed. Her eyes found Chief Agu standing at the door, smiling proudly. Jessica was crying outright, clapping until her hands turned red. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded them. But Shalola's words were simple. I didn't do this alone. Someone saw me when I was invisible. Someone believed I was worth saving. That's why I'm here, because love is stronger than circumstance. That evening, they celebrated at home. The mango tree in the garden was strung with fairy lights. Abini sat nearby, wrapped in a shawl, her eyes peaceful. Chief Agu raised his glass. To the girl who taught us all that greatness doesn't start in mansions, it starts in hearts. Jessica added, and to my sister, my magic. Everyone laughed and cheered. Shalola looked around at the people she loved, her mother Jessica, her new father, and felt something deep, steady, and eternal settle inside her. When the crowd dispersed, she walked into the garden alone. The air was cool, the stars bright. She placed her hand on the trunk of the mango tree, their tree, and whispered, thank you. Thank you for the dust that taught her to dream. Thank you for the hunger that made her brave. Thank you for the pain that led her to kindness. Her life had begun in a gutter, but it had bloomed beneath a tree, and from that soil, she would keep growing. In the quiet, a thought took root in her heart. This is not the end. It's the beginning, because no child is born worthless, no soul too broken to rise again. And somewhere in the distance, as if heaven itself agreed, a soft wind rustled through the leaves, whispering her name, Shalola, the girl who became light.